Today's topic of discussion is narcissistic men. So I received a DM from a practicing sister. She asked me, can you please make a video on narcissistic men? So if you look at today's society, a bunch of guys have been programmed with narcissistic tendencies. These guys here are fragile, weak boys. They ain't got no masculine frame. They ain't got no masculine characteristics. They ain't got nothing. So we're going to be discussing some key points in terms of how these narcissistic men are despised by women. So first point is bum. So these guys here are literally bums in society. They will use and abuse women. They'll try and take what they can out of a woman. And then these guys here ain't working on nothing in life. There's a bunch of guys in society. They ain't got no purpose, they ain't got no mission, they're just talking rubbish all day long on the internet. So if you look at guys on the internet, on social media, all you see is a bunch of bums talking rubbish in comment sections, day in, day out. Do you think any of these weak beta males are respected by women? The answer is no. What guy has got all the time in the world to talk rubbish in people's comments day in, day out? Is that man a man of value? The answer is no. But these guys have convinced themselves, because of their fragile ego, that we're men. So guys who are real men in society, they're actually grinding, they're putting in work. They ain't got time to be talking rubbish about other people. They ain't got no negative energy. They've only got positive energy. So how to spot a guy who's got narcissistic characteristics within him and a guy who's a bum loser in life? Simply look at his behaviour. Is he somebody, who's actually striving towards a goal, an objective, a purpose, a mission? Or is he somebody who just talks in life? Because there's a bunch of guys in society who talk all day long. They talk about they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to achieve this. But are they actually actively working towards that and pushing towards that? Because 9 times out of 10, guys in today's society aren't actually doing that. They're not actually pushing forward and actually grinding day in, day out. So let's say you're speaking to a woman for marriage purposes. It's always better to speak less and do more. So let's say you're working on a project, related to, let's say, a business. It's an online business. And then a woman asks you, oh yeah, have you got your own business, or whatever the case is? Just downplay it and say that, oh yeah, right now I'm starting up this so and so. So let's say it's perfumes. You're selling perfumes. You're like, oh, I'm starting this up, and right now I'm trying to push it out there. Keep it brief and simple. But in her mind, she's going to be thinking that, he's actually going to try and do well in that. Do you understand? But if a guy, is claiming that, I'm earning 10k a month from selling perfumes and I'm doing really well in this, and he's exaggerating the numbers and he's trying to put on a front. As time goes on, the woman will clock on that this guy is just chatting BS. His behavior and his characteristics don't match that entrepreneurial mindset. Because one of the characteristics of a guy who's an actual entrepreneur, he's somebody who's resilient. Do you understand? So he'll go through difficult time periods. But he's showing resilience during those time periods. He's showing persistence. There's no smooth sailing with entrepreneurship. So it's always better to be somebody who downplays his actual results. And if you are working on something, certain times it's even better to just not even say anything. Just say, oh yeah, right now, I'm just working this, whatever job it is that you're doing. So if she was to ask you, what's your profession? And then you say, oh yeah, I'm doing this, working on this, but then I've also got this going on and I'm just trying to build on that. But guys in society, all they want to do is talk rubbish all day long. They're not somebody who's actually pushing and grinding in the actual work profession. All they want to do is just chit chat all day long. A woman can never ever respect that. So that's why it's really important. You guys here, each and every single day, push towards your goal and objectives. So do less talking and more action. So next point is accountability. Guys in society don't want to take no accountability nowadays. They're quick to throw blame at women. Women are doing this, it's women's fault, this incel type mentality. So the incel type mentality is a guy who just blames women. Women are literally picking women. Let me rephrase that. Women are literally picking the winners at the finish line. So if you're all butthurt about that, you're all upset, you're somebody who just doesn't accept that, then guess what? Sit on the sidelines. Right now the game is really, really competitive. So when it comes to relationships, the game is competitive. All this social media, all these feminists, red pill jokers, and so on, they've literally destroyed a lot of relationships. They're all pushing this so-called materialistic lifestyle, external lifestyle. They're not taking accountability for their own actions. So with these red pill jokers, right, they're quick to throw the blame on the woman, say that, oh yeah, woman isn't good enough, we can just fornicate with her and so on. And then we don't want to take no accountability for the fact is that you're fornicating with a woman and you're using and abusing her. If you was an actual man of value, you'd filter a woman from the get-go. You wouldn't start blaming women for your behaviour. But that's what's happening in today's society. Guys don't want to take no accountability for nothing. They don't want to take accountability for their own actions. How can a woman ever follow a guy who doesn't want to take accountability for his decisions? She can never respect that guy. So if a woman is, let's say, not cooperating with you, she's not showing good behaviour, you need to withdraw your communication from her. Stop talking to her. Guys will equate that to, this guy here is being narcissistic. That's not narcissistic. If a guy is literally trying to speak to a woman and she's not trying to get on the same page as him, the only other solution that he has, the only other option that he has is to withdraw communication. A woman needs to see that, okay, this guy here values his attention. He values his time. He hasn't got time to just go back and forth with a woman. If a woman's not trying to get on the same page, she's not trying to cooperate, guess what? He's got better things to be dealing with in life. So it's really important. You guys here, you as men of value, you're taking accountability at all times. Whether a woman shows good behaviour, whenever a woman shows bad behaviour, or whenever you're dealing with women in general. So it's not just with women, but just in life in general as well. When it comes to life decisions, making the right decisions in life. Whatever life events are happening to you, taking full ownership and full accountability of that. So next point is abusive. Beta males in today's society, all they want to do is 50-50 type BS. They've been indoctrinated with this feminism lifestyle. So these guys here, right, they want to get a woman to pay half the bills, get her to work a job, and get her to do whatever for him. These guys here are not actually trying to be sole providers in their household. In today's society, right, the standards of living have become more and more difficult. It's at the point right now where, let's say, a 1-bedroom flat in London costs about an average of 1 to 2k a month. You know, that's what it is right now in the prices in UK. So that's basically, let's say, somebody's salary, one guy's salary, because 50% of guys in the UK are earning 25k or less. You know, so when the man and the woman are both working to make ends meet, just to pay rent. You know, so that's why at certain times, right, let's say you guys here are struggling financially, finding it difficult to stay afloat in UK. Maybe it's time for you guys to look for alternative routes. So certain guys, right, are deciding to leave UK. So if they're living in, let's say, London, some of them are moving outside of London. Some of them are even moving the country. You know, right now the UK is just going downhill. You know, so you guys there need to assess your options and decide whether or not is the UK a viable option in the longevity, in the long term. You know, don't just be that type of guy who's just like, oh, getting a woman to pay for your stuff and pay for your materialistic possessions or whatever it is. Because that woman there, she's going to later on, she's going to remember, oh yeah, I paid for this, I paid for that, I took care of that bill. Now you as a man, you don't need to hear any of that BS. Yeah? Myself, I can never go to sleep at night knowing that a woman's paid for my stuff, paid for my bills or whatever the case is. I'd rather just be alone, stay single. I ain't trying to hear no BS from anyone. You know, but that's what it is. Guys nowadays, they ain't got no backbone, they ain't got no masculinity within them. They just get women to pay for their stuff and be cool with it. You know, they ain't got no shame whatsoever. So final point is cheater. Guys in society, all they do is consume X-rated content and watch filth. So I think it's around 60-70% or 70 to 80%, one or the other, of guys nowadays, all they're doing is consuming filth. So they're consuming filth, X-rated content, jerking off. So the beta males are jerking off to X-rated content, completing, wanking themselves out. They're all wanked out. So when it comes to actually working on the purpose, they're not working on the purpose. These little boys are coming talking rubbish all day. You know, all they do is they all got mouth. But when it comes to actually taking actions, they're nowhere to be seen. You know, how can women ever respect these type of guys? Women can never ever respect these guys. You know, so that's why I get a bunch of guys who are triggered related to my content. So a bunch of weak beta males in my comment section talking rubbish. Because these guys here aren't men. Women despise these guys. If they had the chance, right, if they were to get into a relationship, if they had the chance to cheat, they would. But a lot of guys in society, as soon as they get into one relationship, they manage to grab one woman. They're like, oh yeah, let me hold on to her. That clingy, desperate type behaviour. You know, that right there is just a turn off for a woman. You know, how can a woman ever respect a guy who she's the only option for him? You know, it's not respectable at all, is it? But that's what it is. These bums here, all they want to do is talk rubbish all day long. So, just to wrap up, guys in society are literally bums nowadays. Majority of guys in society. All they want to do is party, shisha, smoke, drink, talk rubbish on the internet. Don't want to do anything constructive. Don't want to actually use their time to better themselves. They don't want to do none of that. So when they see guys who are actually working on themselves, guys who are pushing to new levels, they want to just hate on them and talk rubbish. Now, guys who are secure within themselves, they ain't got time to be hating on other people. They're literally just locked in on their purpose. The next point after that was accountability. Guys nowadays, they don't want to take no accountability whatsoever. They literally want to blame everything on a woman. Oh, woman's not cooperating with him. It's a woman's fault. Woman's not showing him respect. Oh, it's her fault. Everything's a woman's fault. They don't want to take no accountability for their own wrongdoings in life. If you're somebody, right, who's not able to lead yourself and lead other people in society, how can a woman ever follow your leadership? She can never ever follow a guy who's not able to control his own actions and control his own emotions. So you as a man, you need to be able to control your own emotions. That's why it goes back to EQ. A lot of guys talk about IQ. They lack EQ. So EQ is social skills, emotional intelligence. And next point after that was abusive. These guys here, they can be financially abusive. So they'll deplete a woman of her resources. And then these same guys end up being verbally abusive, physically abusive. Doing injustice on women. God sees everything in life. The abuse you do to, let's say, men and women or whoever in society, just know that's going to come back on you one day. That's why it's really important. Treat everyone fairly, treat everyone justly. That's why we're pushing traditional moral values on this channel. We're not trying to push any of this, red pill ideology or, materialistic possessions or any of this other BS. External BS. We're literally pushing internal values over here, because that's what guys are missing in today's society. Internal values. And the final point was cheater. A lot of these guys are hooked on X-rated content. They've literally depleted their energy, jerked off, ain't got no energy to work on their purpose. And then they're wondering why women don't respect them. Why women don't want relationships with them. A guy who's not able to control himself, a guy who's not able to lead in his own life, he's never ever going to get the respect of a woman. So it's really important. You guys here, lead with integrity, lead with class, lead with good standards. So I hope that makes sense, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.